Hello and welcome, Rangers, to Shot for Shot Analysis. Bet you didn't think we'd be back so soon. Well, we sure showed you. I don't know what we showed you, but we showed you, that's what. Last time we discussed the scene where, Ooze is released and Zed briefs him on his mission before, the explosive tape is thrown out the window. Yes, that's a Whose Line Is It Anyways reference. Great show. And then, of course, we get the shot of Ivan sniffing around like a pervert, hentai. And he says, what is that odious stench? Smells like teenagers. Which, technically, the concept of adolescence is not one that actually existed in the ancient period. So, what he would have thought would have, against, in terms of Power Rangers, would have been considered in the ancient times an adult. Yes, that's right. Adulthood for, both sexes began at about 16 years old in the ancient and medieval period. Yes, 16. Not 14, not 15, not 12, 16. And yes, I stress this part because George R.R. Martin, world-renowned idiot, and many of his fans are under the impression that adulthood began somehow younger, and that this justifies relations of a certain sort with those younger. Honestly, it's gross, and we invented wood chippers for a reason. And I'm not going to say any more because YouTube. We're already punished in the algorithm as it is. I mean, just check our stats, or like the views of each of our videos. We went from 13,000 to 70. Yeah, that's no coinkydink. And I know people may not like us saying this, but it's a fact. And the thing is, Ivan is one of those characters who can say this sort of line and get away with it. Now, I just stress about the historic accuracy for a minute, just to point out, this is actually very, very wrong. But in terms of the narrative, it doesn't really matter. Because on the other hand, Ivan is someone who is a satanic character. He's supposed to have a certain insight into, the past, present, and future. He's prescient. Same with Zed and Zordon. They're supposed to have knowledge that is kind of far and away above that of humanity's. So, like, in terms of IQ, for example, they'd be measuring probably in not just the triple digits, but probably in the 4 digits. These are beings that they're basically space alien gods. I would argue that to an extent, Ivan and Zed should be considered cosmic horror in a way. They're kind of cosmic devils and demons. Same with Rita to an extent, because she's technically of the same race as Zed to an extent. In some capacity. I'm not sure how, but she technically is. And Ivan's hatred against teenagers is well documented for good reason, because it was a bunch of teens with superpowers and with attitude. I couldn't resist that joke. Oh, man. I love that first episode. Who kind of locked him up in an egg for 6,000 years. And we have to bear in mind, I know it's a spoiler, but he's had a Charlie horse since the Renaissance. So I don't blame him for being kind of bitter and resentful. I'm using very particular language here. See, I'm a good little boy, YouTube. Bump up our channel, please. I'd like another 400,000 subs, please.
And we all know Charlie horses are painful.
Oh, yeah, they're not fun. And he's had one for, 5 centuries about? Because the Renaissance really begins as the Reformation's kind of in mid-swing. So you're looking at a period when people began to admire the ancient Greek and Roman forms and art. And this really begins in the 14. Let me think. It starts really with the Italians. I'd say probably around the 1450s, thereabouts. But to an extent, I will. I know some put it more in around 1515 or so. Like around the time that Martin Luther starts, pins his beef with the church over, but which is in the 16th century. And the thing is, you could start the Renaissance around that time, but there's to an extent early, like it starts. It's hard to pin down. It starts to get. Well, actually, technically, it would predate the Reformation. So, right before the Reformation, you start to see Europe picking itself back up, and it starts to like really advanced art forms and sculptures and architecture really starts to take off. And we got to bear in mind the Medici family are at the heart of this, and they really start to become powerful and influential in the late 15th century. Not to mention, Constantinople falls in 1453. So this is when Greeks and even some Slavs, who arguably had a more advanced society, start spilling into the West. And this starts in 1453 because they're trying to escape the Islamic conquest by the Ottomans of Constantinople and most of the European holdings of the Greek Empire of Constantinople. So the Reformation, I would argue, begins in the 1450s, right as these intellectuals and these much more civilized and sophisticated individuals pour into the West, even as the papacy starts to kind of do a bit of an archaeological dig and find ancient sculptures and paintings and whatnot, and are more and more impressed by this stuff, and Italian intellectuals and noblemen start to want to aspire after their ancestors. So it's a bit of a mixture thing. Like, it's mixed causes. Some attribute it to one thing, some to another. I'm going to go with the more neo-revisionist thing of, I think, Lars Brownworth and others, and even John Julius Norwich suggested it was the Greeks who passed on the civilization. Now, the monks in the West did preserve it, but it doesn't become a fad until the Greeks pour into the West. So, in a way, the West was colonized by the Greeks. In a way. And they brought all those beautiful ancient forms and whatnot. So Ivan Ooze's, I imagine that his beef with the Renaissance, well, might also, well, he'd probably have a beef with the Greeks and the Italians in general. Hey, the Greeks and the Italians were the ones who started these cultural movements in the classical period, and they're the ones who revived it in the medieval period. So that's very important. And of course, they passed it along to the most important nation on earth, France, and all of the other nations, whom on most maps we just say not France. I'm joking. And of course, there's Quebec and not Quebec, which is the rest of Canada, whatever the hell that is. So, like, you have not Quebec in the Americas and not France in Europe, and you have not Japan in Asia. So you have Japan, France, Quebec. So like that, these are the only important nations to know about, along with Greece and Italy to an extent. Hey, it's the truth. It's how we perceive the world, and it's actually how everyone should. I'm joking. At least that's how I assume the world's supposed to work.
I mean, if it's not those, then it probably isn't civilized.
Yeah, and I have another question. Why is Zordon in America? Why wouldn't he be in France? Everyone knows the teenagers with the most attitude are in France. And Japan. I'll actually give Japan this much. They have a lot of attitude.
But they've got the Super Sentai instead.
Oh, right. Zordon chose those guys for them. What about France? Oh, sure. Ignore the most important nation on Earth. Yeah, we're kind of trolling here. But back on topic. Ooze also shows here a level of hatred that, honestly, he only ever really shows for Zordon. Later at the end, he really hates these Power Rangers in particular. I'm just saying, because, like, right now, he doesn't really think much of them. Well, he doesn't hate them. He doesn't even know them as they are. Like, he hates them to an extent in that they are the heirs to those who sealed them up. He hates those who sealed them up. He despises them. And remember, our fan theory is that the Blue Ranger from 6,000 years ago is the Guardian from Lost Galaxy. So this intertwines this movie, and even, remember, Rita was sealed away in a trash can by ancient Rangers. I would theorize the Guardian was either one of those Rangers or these ones. I think it's more probable the 6,000 years ago thing, and they combined the Quasar Sword abilities with the morphers of Zordon. But I'd also theorize that this Blue Ranger, who was the Guardian, is the one who took the Quasar Swords and stuck them in the stone on that foreign planet. So, because we know he's pretty much the guy who stuck those swords in those stones. We know he has a connection to the Quasar Swords. We know he's basically the Zordon of space there. But we also know there's some sort of connection, probably on his end, with the likes of Dulcia and Zordon. And we know someone sealed up Ivan 6,000 years ago. And this is the biggest accomplishment of any kind of ancient Rangers who precede the modern day ones, who are the greatest Rangers. But the ones from 6,000 years ago were amazing. They were powerful and formidable fighters. Most of them probably died. It's just a fact. And at least that's what I think of as fact to an extent, because there's no way all of them might have survived, because Ivan is too powerful. But there has to have been at least one survivor. So my theory is the Guardian. But on the other hand, we know that something that happened in that battle traumatized even Zordon. And contrary to the Boom Studios comics, which are the worst thing ever, Zordon does love his Rangers. He treasures them. And the thing is, Ivan hates them because they beat him. They sealed him up. So right now he hates their shadow in a way. He's still haunted by them. That's why he says teenagers with such loathing and hatred. He's not seeing like Tommy, Kimberly, Billy, Aisha, Rocky, and Adam. He's seeing those ancient Rangers. But that is until he meets them.
To his mind, there's no difference because they're servants of Zordon.
That is until he meets them. But we'll get to that next time on Shot for Shot Analysis. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Seriously, we're almost at 400. Let's, tally-ho, let's get up to 400. We really do want to get over this benchmark. And we really do want to grow this channel again. And it's the greatest form of encouragement you can give us. Of course, we also have in the description, or maybe I'll just put it in the comment section. Yeah, I'll put it in the comment section. A link to our Royal Road account where you can read our fiction. Most of it is fantasy. So if you like swordsmen fighting each other and combat, and also Lord of the Rings style stuff, which I think Power Rangers with this movie does draw some inspiration, given it's a quest, really. We'll get more into that later, probably in another video. So yeah, if you want to check out our stuff, feel free and give us a follow over on Royal Road. I think this time I'll link to Akamanoran. I don't know if I did last time. I think I did. But anyways, remember, Rangers, may the power protect you.